Copywriting is probably the only profession where you turn your words into money. And if you are a businessman, then literally the only thing that differentiates you from your competitors or any other person running in the same business is your copy. And the success of your marketing campaigns depend how strong or weak your copy is. And that is why having a copywriter is so important. A copywriter who can understand your business and who can actually implement, write messages or craft messages which resonate with your customers, bring you the most sales. And in this episode, we are talking with Robert Allen, who is a $1 million copywriter, and he is a great direct response marketer. And as you know, I'm a big fan of direct response marketing. And in this video, we'll be nerding out on this exact topic, and I'll be asking him questions about his techniques, his processes, and how he got his start, and how anybody who wants to look into a career of copywriting, what should they do to actually see some results. So without any further ado, let's get started. So in this interview, we'll discuss how awesome Robert is and how he does the things that he does. So without any further ado, let's get into his copywriting brain and dig deep into what he does. So Robert, what's up, man?
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited for it. Anytime we can sit down and nerd out about copy, I'm like, let me go ahead and get my coffee up and let's just go. Let's talk all things
Awesome.
email, all things copy, whatever you want to talk about. I'm an open book.
Yes, awesome. So I love your videos. I love how you break things down. And I was watching, I think, one of your videos which said like, how do you get your first client? And there you mentioned the difference between a pro copywriter and a noob copywriter is like the noob will actually start writing. And that was so impactful. I thought like I had to get this person into my interview. And that's how I reached out to you. And here we are. We have started talking. So, Robert, tell me, how did you get your start into copywriting? I think you are in the finance sector, right?
Yeah, well, I think that's a good way of putting it. I should not be a copywriter today. If I were to extrapolate at this point in my career, I should be the head of some bank somewhere back in Tennessee. Because actually, I went to school and I majored in finance, and I was a super numbers nerd. Like, was obsessed with investing in the stock market. Like, I actually almost got kicked out of my school because we actually did this stock trading program where we would simulate we would buy these fake stocks. Like, we each got like $100,000 in fake money. And I was the one student in the class who had discovered options at this point. So I had leveraged all the money up, and I had like a $2.4 million portfolio by the end. And the professor was like, "What? You're in options trading and all this stuff." So that was the path that I was kind of set on. And when I graduated school, I actually landed a job working in an investment bank in downtown Nashville, Tennessee. And I hated that job so much. I literally had no idea what I was signing up for. And I was just like, is this like my life for the next 10 years? Because I would look at these people who had been in the industry, or, my bosses, and I would be like, I don't want your life. Like, you are angry every day. Like, every day you show up, it kind of sucks. And so, being kind of immersed in this world of finance, like, one person who was on my radar at this time was actually Ramit Sethi, who's wrote an insanely cool book
I
on
love him.
personal
Love that guy.
finance. And yeah, he's awesome. And so I discovered him in college, and like, I'd read his book, and one day I was like, actually on the back of his book, it was like, I will teach you to be rich.com. And I was like, okay, let me go to his website. Like, I'm curious to learn more about this guy's stuff. I start reading his blog, and I was obsessed with his content. And so I opted into his email list, and I don't even know what an email list is at this point. And just one day, out of the blue, I don't even know if his autoresponder was set up at the form that I opted in. I see this thing. It's like $1,000 freelance writing challenge or something. Like, send me your best pitch for a business idea. And if it's good, I'll not only feature you in an upcoming email, but I'll cut you $1,000 check. And I was like, I studied business in college, and like, maybe this could be the seed money. Like, $1,000 sounded like a nice little side project. Maybe this could be the seed money for me to do something on the side or whatever. So I wrote this super long email. Like, I'm talking you had to scroll like
Thousands of
pages
words.
and yeah, it was thousands of words. I proved it. I showed it to my girlfriend. I even sent it to my mom, and I was like, "Is this any good?" And they were like, "Yeah, I think so." And I sent it. I submitted it to the contests and all this stuff. Days go by. They announced the contest winner, and I open the email. My heart like is like palpitating, and I don't see my name in the email. I'm like, "Oh,
Oh,
dang, I sucked." But then 2 days later, I get a response, and it's a message back to the email that I had sent,
oh,
and it was
he
from
replied.
the yes, it was from the head of content at Ramit's company, and the guy said, "Hey, the business idea was actually total crap, just to be totally frank with you, but your copy caught our attention." And we're actually hiring for writers right now. Would you be interested in coming on to IWT to write content, emails, blog posts, and being a copywriter for our staff? So I have no idea what copywriting is at this point, but this sounds amazing to me that someone will pay me to write what I just wrote. And I was like, this is insane. So I kid you not, I actually go into work the next day and I quit my job. I give them zero notice. I said, I'm not coming back on Monday. Today's Friday. And I just go all in on this career path of copywriting, and I'm stumbling into it, figuring it out as I go, because I actually had never heard of it before. And that was really my first kind of foray into this world. Like that was my first client was Ramit Sethi, and I signed him on like a couple $1,000 a month retainer. And then they actually rolled that into a full-time job eventually. But it was a rocket ship of a ride that I just kind of kept scaling up from there.
That is insane. As insane. I could like write a book like that and nobody would believe, like they would be like, ah, this is a fiction. That is
It
great. And yeah, please go.
Oh no, it totally seemed like unreal. And like telling people and telling my friends about this, telling them like, yeah, I'm gonna quit my job and at this bank, and I'm gonna go work for this company called I Will Teach You to Be Rich, and they have no office, and so I'm just gonna work from home. And what I'm gonna be doing is actually writing emails all day. And people were like, I would get the weirdest looks. People would literally like, has he lost his mind? Because I was what you I would say I would be a top performer in the category of finance and investing and all that stuff. And then I just gave it all up to do this, which was kind of an insane jump for me.
It is so difficult to, explain the job to your peers. I felt it, like as a copywriter, this is what I face a lot. It's like, dude, what do you do? I write stuff. And how much do you get paid? I'm like, okay, this is the salary. And they're like, where is the office? I'm like, right now I'm sitting in my countryside village and working from home as everyone else is. They'll be like, do you have an office? I'm like, no, this is my office. And they get like, what? We busted our ass off to be in here in this scrappy office. And what are you doing? And yeah, I think that's part of the job that I absolutely love. So yeah, hats off to that. Great start. And like, did you get mentored there, or like, how did you, climb your way up? How did you start learning the things in the copy?
Um, Great question. I would say that is basically me accepting that them as a client was basically like me walking to the top of a cliff and then someone just kind of grabbing me on the back and just pushing me off the side, because I had no idea what I was signing up for. And I actually struggled quite a bit when I first started working there because, I didn't even know what a headline was, body copy, all this stuff. So I'm just kind of going with what I would say is mostly just kind of see something on the team and try to model it, and just reading books and trying to do as much stuff as I can. And I actually did have a really great copy chief there who kind of walked me through some of this stuff. And I remember there was one point kind of, as my retainer contract was coming to an end and they were, debating whether or not to extend me a full-time position. He actually pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Rob, just to be totally frank with you, we've seen some stuff from you that proves that you have raw talent, but I don't think you're going to make it here unless you get pretty serious about, learning the craft and all this stuff." And so up to that point, I was kind of writing blog posts. Every now and then I would write like an engagement email, and I was taking a crack at sales pages, but they kept being like, nah, this isn't good enough. You just got to go back to the content side of things. And I was like, no, I want to be a copywriter.
I want to
And
sell.
he would, yeah, I want to sell. I want to do what you guys are doing. I want my words to generate millions of dollars. And he said, you can do that. You can totally do that, but you've got to start much smaller. We're not going to put you on the sales pages. Like, let's put you on some refreshes of like old email funnels that are on the back end and that type of stuff. And that is something to this day that I recommend like newer writers get started on email copy, because it is basically a much shorter form sales page. If any of you guys are studying this stuff, it's kind of crazy because you'll see like John Carlton stuff or John Caples or all that stuff, and it's like all this long form copy, and you're like, how they come up with this stuff? And for me, I didn't even have like the chops to hold a sales argument for 45 pages, much less you know
Yeah.
on and on and on, even beyond that. So email was the perfect place for me to practice. You got your subject line, that's your headline, your first couple sentences, that's your lead, your call to action, that's basically your close. And you can beef it up from there, but really learning the skill of email copywriting was so powerful, because then I could take that and I could say, well, if I want to write a sales page, it's basically just like 15 emails. So let me just space that apart. And like, eventually I got really good at writing sales pages, sales funnels, and eventually managing the whole email list for different brands and stuff of that nature. But it all started with just kind of that single email to Ramit, which I kind of rolled that skill into what I would do for the rest of my life, which is pretty much just email copy.
Yeah, man. I mean, that is insane. And I think that's a pretty good way to start. To start by writing emails, because I feel like ad copies. I got my start as ad copywriter, and it was still a struggle because ad copy, all you have to do is get the click. But email has a multi-fold objective. Like, you have to educate your customer, and also you have to sell the click so that they come to the landing page, and that is the perfect place, like the balance between you know nurturing your customer, understanding your customer, like basically a short form sales copy is what we can say. And yeah, so which all authors you followed? Like, I'm a pretty big book nerd, as you can see. Which all authors did you follow when you started? Whom did you study?
I mean, John Carlton was my
Oh,
original homeboy. Like I immediately loved his stuff. Like he had this copywriting book that was like the I don't know if we can curse on your channel, but the kick-ass copywriting secrets of a marketing rebel or something. I don't know what it was, but I remember getting that book and being like, man, this is different. This feels different. Like I'm excited reading this. Like I want to buy everything that he's writing about. It's like the paid product.
yeah.
And he has a couple other books like the Entrepreneur's Guide to Getting Dirty and something. It's really good. His content has probably been some of the most influential to me. Ramit's obviously because I was studying his stuff while working with him, and you know, I would say another big influence on me ended up just being like Andre Chaperone. He's
Mm.
got a lot of. I love the way he thinks. He's very like graphic first. Like, if you've ever seen like any trademarks of copy that I write, I'm very systematic. So there's like that underlying, Ramit systems are always in there. I love really aggressive headlines, so John Carlton stuff, and then like I love like creative images that really sum up everything
Yeah.
that you're doing in the copy. Tries like use that as a grabber, and I think Andre Chaperone is really like the king of that. They've been some of the biggest influences on me for sure.
I think that, yeah, that reflects in your copy, and I love your copy. I literally have a label dedicated to Rob Allen, and yeah, I see your headlines are like proper strong headlines. How much time do you spend on headlines? I mean, I can't think of headlines like those. Like, it's difficult for me. Like,
It's different, right? So like no matter where you are in the spectrum at this point, I wouldn't even know how many words I've written, but you know, I've written probably 10,000 or more emails at this point, hundreds of sales pages, hundreds of VSLs and stuff like that. So at this point, copywriting has become how I think. It's actually the first layer of thought that I have on the world. Like I see signs on businesses and I'm like walking down
you
the
have
street
that
and I'm like,
prism right in front of
yeah.
you. Okay.
I'm just like editing the copy to walk into a shop like on the spot. Like it's very difficult for me to look at anything without seeing just the copy lens. So it's almost how I think first. So headlines to me sometimes are just sentences in my head. You know what I mean?
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So yeah, so I kind of followed Dan Kennedy's advice on this, like write like 30 headlines first and pick the best one, and that kind of works with me. And yeah. And what I've seen, like every copywriter has a process. Like I have a process. Like before I start writing copy, I would probably spend 3 days, 4 days, or maybe a week just researching stuff around that. What is your process? How does it look like? If let's say today I tell you, Robert, this is like a brand new business that you have never worked on and you have to work on right now, very lucrative. How would you start?
That's deep. First, I think my answer is going to be very different than most people because, you know, through our agency and through the work that we've done through the years, one of the things that we really learned is the power of story and how important it is to really craft that initial message. What was the foundation of the brand? Like, who are our enemies? Like, who are you as a writer, like contacting your customers? Because this is the stuff that like is going to reverberate through your brand for years. Like,
Yeah.
to this day, like as I've kind of grown my own email list and built my brand outside of being a copywriter for other businesses, people, they know my stories. They feel like they're connecting with me on a one-on-one basis because I'm making sure that my brand of who I am is solid in all the messaging. So like I would actually start by kind of interviewing the founder or interviewing who it is going to be kind of telling the story and pulling those things out because, one of
Mm,
the things that, Ramit's story is everywhere. We would plaster that through all the stuff because you're going to use that as the thread to weave in all the content, all the sales messaging, everything you're going to do beyond that point. Another brand that I've worked with, drx.com, Ancient Nutrition. He had this really powerful story about kind of helping his mom heal from cancer all naturally and going through like a very natural process to actually reverse and actually, go back into full remission two times. And so that story was the bedrock of
mm,
everything that we would do, all the products we would create, all the emails we would write, everything kind of originated from nailing that first story and making sure that all the customers heard it. So I always like to start there is finding that like, some of those core elements of like, what's going to be the story, the guiding post of our brand, because the content, the emails, the sales stuff, that all actually takes care of itself when we fit it in the narrative of who our founder is and what our customers choose us for over other brands. Does that kind of make
right.
sense?
Yes.
So that's
Yes, absolutely.
so sometimes that actually is the most valuable thing that we do for businesses. We'll actually just go in and audit their story and look at that because you could come up with 1,000 content ideas once you know like who this character is, because really all this is, you know, marketing, it's a term we use because we don't really want to, we want to give it a new thing. We want to make it, sales oriented, but people are driven by stories at the end of the day. And that's really what this is like, this is you kind of, finding that character, I have all these books on my shelf that are nonfiction or, they're fake, they're fiction books. And why do
Right.
we come back to them and read them again and again? It's like, we've got our hero. They're going to face certain set of challenges. Um, they're going to be moments where you don't think it's going to work out, and then it all does. And that's really what you're doing over and over again with your emails, with your products, with all these things. That's all it is storytelling.
Dude, that's insightful because I just had this brain gasm right now because people don't remember messages. I mean, if you let's say give a helpful tip in an email, they would probably remember the message. But if you weave it in a story, "Okay, this is what happened to me and this is how I got out of it, people are going to remember you. So yeah, that's insane. Cool. And how do you do the audience research? The how do you research my customers if I let's say hire Robert?
So there's really two ways we can think about it, right? So there is the way that, you're the hired gun and you're going into an existing business and you're like, a brand might say, we want to market to people like this, and this is how we want our things to look like. And so we always use like intake forms. We're like, you tell us about your dream customer. Who are these people? Where do they hang out? What do they look like? And then we actually sometimes will compare that to what we find when we do an audit on their database of who actually is their customer. And so like some of the times it just comes from really sticking to the messaging that the founder tells you, because if you're the hired gun, you can't really be like, no, this isn't who you're writing to. You're you know, famously, like when I was working with Dr. X Ancient Nutrition, that business really at one point had a crew of people come through, like as the marketing, the senior leadership changed over, who thought, you know, we are marketing to, very trendy Whole Foods going moms who are 35 years old, and they're like very passionate about their health. Couldn't have been more wrong.
Wrong.
It was absolutely wrong. All the vast majority of the customer database was like 55-year-old plus women who maybe went to Whole Foods, but they didn't give a mess about that. What they wanted to do is live comfortably through older age and not necessarily, stress about their skin as they got older. It was a very different demographic. So, but the thing is, and this is the truth that sometimes copywriters can't swallow, is like, what does the business tell you they want? Do they want you to market to those people, or do they want you to market to the true audience? And is
Yeah.
there a world where you have to do two of those things at once? So that is one part of customer research, is just getting your client to tell you. But for me, when I'm thinking about markets and like thinking about products that I want to create, like I don't necessarily think about it in terms of demographics as much as I do psychographics, and more about like thought patterns and beliefs, and the type of content that would attract, customers and things that I find very interesting. So yeah, that's kind of my process.
Okay. So one of the biggest challenges that I faced, like I think you kind of hovered over that, is like I was working with this e-commerce brand, and we were talking about certain strategies because it was a fitness brand and we were writing emails around those, and they gave me four target customers. Like through our data, through our research, these are the four people that keep on buying more and more. Then how do you segment those? Like, for example, they had like some 160 products, and majority of the audience fit into four categories, like working moms, people working from home, the middle-aged men, and there were teenagers. Like these four categories they pretty much covered, and it was really a challenge to craft emails, because there would be some overlaps. How do you have you ever come across such challenges?
Yeah. So typically you can either do this at the top of funnel level, like you can have like quizzes that are actually the ads. We've done that in the past, where we've actually created entire funnels where the person actually tells you like their zodiac sign, and the outcome pages are all totally different based on
Okay.
which zodiac they
Customized.
have. So you write the custom copy there, and then it gets messy because you've got like 12 zodiac signs, and then there's all these different flows, and it's like, oh my gosh. But it works really well if you're like, you want to like really lean into that. I find in most cases, a lot of businesses do over segment on the front end, and then they under segment on the back end. And by that, I mean, like, most of the time, like some of the biggest wins you'll get are just like, like if you're running a fashion brand, is like, are you shopping for yourself or others? Are you shopping for men or women? Like those two splits,
Done.
that's the 80-20. You don't really need to do like, and are you only interested in tops? Like, no, just let let them do the shopping on your store, and your cart abandons and all that stuff kind of take care of itself.
Yeah.
You don't really want to do too much segmentation on the front end. It's like what you described to me sounds like a nightmare. Like tech genius, work at home mom. It's like you're getting
Dude, it's a
too in the
t-shirt that you are
weeds.
selling.
Yeah. If they're on your website, the chances are they probably are going to buy their own thing anyways. And then that's the behavior that you want to segment for, product based. And then you can get granular within that. It's like, what are you using the product for? And you can kind of get new benefits and highlight those benefits. But I think there is a oversaturation of avatar segmentation in this world, and it needs to stop. It's wrong, and it actually very much complicates all the back end stuff. Sometimes we've actually gone into businesses, particularly e-commerce businesses, that think they're super crafty and smart, and they have like 17 things that they're segmenting for on the front end, and it's like, we're going to delete that form altogether. It's going to be one major pop-up, and then we're only going to segment based on the products they buy, because that ultimately is what you want to be optimizing for, in my experience, in terms of speed. Because if you get 100 SKUs and you're trying to market to 4 different avatars, it's going
That's
to get
400.
messy
Yeah,
fast.
yeah, man. Yeah, that's one of the problems there. And like in this particular client's case, what we had to do, like we had to really narrow down our emails, uh, and the client would be like, some of the emails would be overlapping, right? And still they would be like, okay, use this email here, use this email there. And it's kind of sometimes difficult to convince the client ki, no, this is not the way it works, you use the way it is. And what is your experience when it comes to like because in e-commerce we send a lot of graphic emails, like over the top, like showing the products and stuff like that. Have you ever A/B tested that with like only text-based non-graphic emails and tried to compare the results?
I love this question. So my personal favorite way to do it, just to go ahead and admit my bias from the beginning, is that I love plain text. If you're on my email list, you know I like
You're
plain
my
text
man.
copy. Yeah. But I lean into that more because I am thinking about, stories, and I'm selling information products, and ultimately people are buying into me as someone they can trust. And so it's really nice to be able to have that communication channel with them, which is why we're doing this video right now. It's like you want to be able to your audience to connect with you on video right now. If I could send a video to every day out to my list, I totally would, but it's very difficult to do that. So text is sometimes faster. So that is my bias kind of from the start. And we sometimes will skew brands, particularly like supplement brands, in that direction, because I think in general, you get a lot more bang for your buck, and you can move a lot faster when there is just text as the variable. We can, there's not a lot of things to switch out. You don't have to go to photo shoots that cost tens of thousands of dollars. You don't have to hire models and all this stuff. It becomes very complicated.
Because in the end, like somebody wants to lose weight or they want to gain weight. That's it. Like you
Yep.
just write the story.
But I do have a big but coming for you here. And the but is there are many categories and there are lots of brands that actually prefer the pretty emails. And in that case, as a freelancer and as an agency owner or whatever you are, you should give your client that. It's a little bit of give them what they want while also giving them a little bit of what they need. So you can kind of sneak in those emails from the founder and that plain text in different places. And I've kind of talked about that in other places, but you could do that and you can sneak those in and they will very much perform. And they are actually sometimes when they're hidden inside of an ecosystem that's mostly the pretty graphic driven emails, they can actually shock the reader awake to be like, on behalf of the CEO, this is the first time they're contacting you. Here's a special customer only coupon. Boom. A lot of reorders come off of that email. But you do want to give clients a little bit of what they also want, which is a lot of times those pretty graphic emails. And for brands in certain categories, that is actually very needed. Let's talk about like a few that come stand to mind, like fashion, any type of cookware, things like that, where you really want to see the product.
Yeah.
It actually is very, very, very important to actually put those things in there, because like you can only write so much about like a t-shirt or a sweater, especially if it's like a premium sweater, but
graphic works.
It does work. Some people like to hate on it, but it does work. So
No, my only objection of the graphic is like it makes the email so heavy. It lands either in promotions or spam. It's
total,
the killer.
totally. And it really comes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is where is the primary place that you're telling the stories? Because ultimately I will die on this grave, which is die on this hill, which is people don't buy products, they buy stories, and they buy from brands that they like. And so a lot of times you'll see these brands that actually prefer like pretty emails. It's like, go to their Instagram and it's like a lot of stories being posted every day, a lot of, posts on their feed where they're actually have some text, and like you see a community forming like in the comments, and it's like, oh, so that's what you're doing. So the email is actually the back end piece to the primary way that you're storytelling, which is your social media. So you can still do it, kind of interweave these things. You just can't forget the stories.
Yes, I did this exact thing. Oh, you're saying something?
Nope.
Okay, all right. So I did this thing. So I was working for this brand, and we did a sequence. So I pitched them this idea that we will write only text-based helpful emails for like 5 days of the week. We'll just write text. Sixth day or the seventh day, we'll shoot out a promotional email. and see the way it goes. So the problem with that client was their emails were not delivering. Most of the emails were either going to promotions or spam, so they were not looking at a big, open rate. They're looking at like some 10% max open rate. And when we did this, it was a fitness brand, of course. So for that matter, I mean, we can agree on that. It works. The text works. So when we did this strategy, like wrote text for 6 days, and seventh day we should shot out a promotional sequence. Every single, like most of the emails landed on the inbox, and we got like some 60% open rates straight up, even on the promotional emails, because they kept on opening in the uh, inbox, and the CTA in the nurturing sequence were like reply to this email, reply to this email, reply to this email. So a lot of people kept on replying, and because of that, like we got some pretty good results with that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
68% open rate. I'll take that all day.
Yeah, man. And yeah, like I keep on doing experiments like this. So what is your, like, how do you come up with ideas? Like how do you stop, like how do you keep experimenting with ideas? Like I'm pretty sure you are a guy who keeps on experimenting with new stuff and new techniques around it.
That's a great question. And this is, what I like to tell people is that I was dropped on my head when I was a baby because I actually was.
Okay. Hey,
My
me
mom
too.
put me on the couch
I have
with.
a dent here.
So a lot of times, like one of my favorite frameworks is just like when when I notice that something is working, I ask myself, how can I double down on it? Or when I notice that there is like an assumption that I have, I say, what if I flipped it and did the total opposite? And those two frameworks in and of itself can get you a very long way. So I can give you some examples of it. One was so an example of how can I do more of something that's working really well? One thing that I realized with my own, I guess I have to kind of separate some of the examples, but let me give you an example from clients first. The one thing that I realized with one of our clients that we were working with is that, every single time that we use a testimonial, the performance of the email would improve. Sometimes just slightly, but it seemed like every time we did it, the performance of the email would improve. So what I did, and I call this my wall of social proof, a very ugly wall of social proof. I went in and one day I went on the Facebook ad account and I took screenshots of every positive comment that had ever been left on this brand's page. And I just put it in a screenshot folder and I called it ugly screenshots for the client name. And I went back into the Klaviyo account and by every button in the welcome flow, in the cart abandoned, in the browser abandoned, and the post purchase, I put a screenshot of buttons that or a screenshot of testimonials from people being like, I love this product. I've been taking it for 25 years and it's made a difference in my life. That flooded the result. I mean, we saw I think like a 10% lift in the whole email revenue that whole month on the flows just from that alone.
Crazy.
So it's just like, this works. Let me do more of it. So anytime that you notice something is working, how can you double down on it? And that framework is very powerful in business and in life and just in general. So that is one of my favorite things because most people don't think like
scientific advertising, dude. Like a lot of ideas. I love that book. I love this man. And yeah, man, that's good. Like, and it makes sense. Like, you basically made the customer the hero of your story there. Like, social proof. And how that makes sense how it works. All right. Awesome. So, what are you working on right now? Like, yeah, please go on. You were saying something.
Oh, no, I forgot to tell you my other way of coming up with ideas, which is how can I do the opposite?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, that is one thing that I noticed myself doing quite a bit. So in terms of email, one thing that we've seen before is like, a funnel is traditionally like, click this link, you're going to be taken to the order page and that will tell you the offer in the email. So you go there. And so at one point I was like, what if we just didn't do that? What if we made an entire sequence where none of the emails would actually mention discount codes? It would just be like, click here to get a new piece of content. And you kind of move through this series where you're kind of clicking on content and you unlock a discount at the end based on your engagement.
Wow.
And this was a really weird idea that actually worked really well in terms of getting people to click on the emails, and then the redemption rate and the order values of some of those orders that would come through on those hidden coupon codes that people would kind of stumble on was insane. So that is a way. So where you can kind of look at, I think I've called this something like the reverse funnel or something like that.
Yeah, this
But
like indirect response marketing maybe.
yeah, so it just comes as a surprise. And that is actually one thing that human behavior, if you want to look at people, people love surprises. And it's better when they have no idea when it's coming. And so doing that kind of for different clients and for some of my own products has been really powerful, just turning the traditional funnel on its head. But
Hmm.
those are two of my favorite frameworks for coming up with new ideas.
I would imagine like that would set the expectation wrong for some, like I don't know why I'm thinking like that. Because if you don't mention that you are selling them at some point, you know, wouldn't that set a wrong what do you call expectation in your or reader's mind that okay, I'm just getting a content. They will not go there pre-sold. What do you think about that?
Well, that's a great point. But I think you should design all of your content to be moving your ideal prospects toward a sale, even if it's content. Sometimes
Hmm.
stories can actually move people towards, you know, the best marketing is actually not selling something, it is changing behavior. And that is
Hmm.
what you really want to be doing. So another one we've done is, traditionally with an e-commerce brand, it's like they opt into a form, and then the email is like the discount code. And it's like, you just want to experiment with these things. Like, I think it's just like in anytime that you see that everyone is doing something, like, it's like, how can we do the opposite? So one thing we do is like, well, here's that 10% code that we promised. But if you want to prove that you're like a serious reader, or you want to, unlock a special bonus, whitelist our emails and tell us you did it and respond to this, and we'll actually send
Wow.
you a double. We'll actually send you double the amount of coupon, just to let us know you're a serious person committed to fit. Different brands can do it differently,
That's
but
insane.
it works. And I just like to challenge assumptions I have, because sometimes I will be totally honest. These experiments fail, and you're like, man, there's a reason everyone is doing this. There's a reason everyone likes Squid Games. It's good, but you know, anytime that you just find yourself just going into decisions without actually making the choice, then that is a point of optimization potentially.
No, the example that you just gave, that is insane because you gamified the system and people love games. People love
Yes.
surprises, people love games, and as long as you keep it fun, you can get a sale. I guess that. And like every time we are on the office meeting where we'll be talking about, hey, whether we should do this, or whether we should do that, would this piss the customer off and whatnot. I mean, the simplest way to go about is like, dude, just test it. Like your market is.
And this is something that, marketers in general need to get more comfortable with. But like, you know, having a few haters in the world is not the worst thing. You know, people that are liked by everyone don't generally get that like 10 out of 10 notch out of people. So like sometimes whenever I feel like this is a graduating scale for copywriters, but when you're first writing emails, sometimes you go in there and you check about the unsubscribes. When I write emails today, I think I get several dozens of unsubscribes every time I see an email to my list. And if I didn't, I'm like, oh no, what did I do wrong? Because, sometimes it's one of those things where you want people to have a strong feeling in the opposite direction, because in order to create a reaction like that, you have to go the other way as well. So some of my best emails have been emails, some of the ones that I print out and people are like, this is something that you should have charged for, Rob. Like I printed this out and I saved this as
Yeah,
something.
I saw that
As,
screen. This
as
should be at least $997 or something like that.
yeah. So sometimes people say that, and it's like, those are the same emails where I'm getting spam reports and people are being like, unsubscribing from my list. And I'm like, that's good. I want, I want to crystallize that group of fans that really enjoy the stuff, while cultivating people who, and while repelling everyone who it does not, because you want those two forces to kind of go in tandem.
I have a weird batch of audience. Like for me, there are some people who do unsubscribe, but then there are some people who are subscribed to my email and they'll reply with some crazy bad words. Has it happened to you?
Oh yeah, I don't know if you can link this up in the show notes or whatever, but
It's okay.
I have a video on YouTube channel where I actually meet emails with other copywriters that
I saw
I've
that.
gotten, and I get some haters. I send an email every day to thousands of people. Actually at this point it's reaching 10,000 plus people. So I do get quite a few replies back where sometimes they're loony. A lot of times they're awesome. Like I love most of them, but sometimes people have lost their mind. Like
Yeah.
there's some funny ones I've gotten through the years.
But yeah, like I think I read this. Dan Kennedy, somebody mentioned this. Like it's okay, it's good to be loved by some and absolutely hated by some, then kind of be liked by everyone else. That's where you should not be like the likable guy. That's how you get friend zoned. You don't get the girl that
Yes.
way. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Cool. Awesome, Robert. Thank you very much for this. Like, I always wanted to talk copy with you. Like, every time I see your video, I'm like, dude, I just wish to be with this guy right now because I have so much input to give. And, today I loved talking to you. Yeah, any final thoughts around copy? Let's say one question for any beginner copywriter who just wants to start his career. What should they do?
The biggest thing is creating some level of momentum forward, because I think in the beginning, like, you might just discover copywriting, you're like thinking like, this is a very interesting way of pursuing a path to business. Like I can just write words and I can have a company. How cool is this? And that is where it starts. And like, as long as you can keep that passion and not necessarily go straight for like, I'm going to be the $1 million copywriter, I'm going to be the 7 or 8 figure company maker or whatever in the beginning, because I honestly believe, and like almost every writer who I've come across who has been in this game for, 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years, it wasn't about the money in the beginning. And so it's very hard sometimes to separate these two things, right? So it's like, I have this passion and I want it to pay off and I want to make a career of this, but what do I do? Because like, I don't want to just be doing it for the money. So in a lot of cases, and like, this is where I get some flack, sometimes it's good to go get a job where you can get the safety of, a monthly paycheck, where you're a copywriter helping one brand. You're basically just committed to that and then branching out and getting some clients and doing that on the side. And then once you have enough cushion there, you can go and make this a really big thing. And that really only takes like a year commitment or a 2-year commitment to a company, and you can go really far. And you don't have to be a full-time person. You can be, monthly contract, where that's basically your primary point of business. But I think so many people, they get so tied up in the money and they think they quit because they're not making 6 figures in a year. And it's like, dude, I took a pay cut to become a copywriter for a lot. And I know most of the people that actually succeed in this thing for 5, 10 plus years, they got all the
Yeah,
payoff in the back half. The last 2 years were the last two that made them all the money. And the first 5 were just kind of suck. You sucked it up and you did something, and you can go a lot faster. You can get mentors, you can, really commit to training programs and stuff like that. But that's my biggest advice to new writers, is just love it and love your client success more than anything, because one testimonial can be worth more than any paycheck. That's one thing
absolutely.
I always tell people. We've taken like testimonials we've gotten from clients and turned into a case study. And then that becomes the thing that closes the next 10 pieces of business, because people are like, I want that. And you're
Yeah,
like, wow, just because I
absolutely.
committed to getting the results for one person. But yeah.
I think that's a very wonderful point. Like it's never a zero sum game. It's always a positive sum game. Like I would suggest like anybody who starts, they should do a full time job because imagine like there are institutes who ask for thousands of dollars to just teach you copywriting. Instead, you just become a copywriter, learn everything on the job. Because you are learning everything on the job, here you are gaining the experience, which is insane in itself. Plus, you're also learning everything while somebody else pays you for it. I mean, what else do you want, right?
And a lot of times those companies will pay for the courses and the mentorship and all the stuff you want. Like my jobs, the companies I've worked with have made some of the coolest experiences for me. I've gotten to be a part of digital marketers, like elite tier of membership. I've gotten flown out to Tony Robbins Unleash the Power
Oh,
Within event.
nice.
It was amazing. Like I've gone to countless traffic and conversions events as like a VIP, on and on and on, all because companies paid for it. Do it on the company's dime. There's this like saying in real estate where it's like OPM, which stands for other
Other
people's
people's
money.
money.
Yeah. And you could do that as a copywriter too. Go get a
Yes.
job and go work for somebody who's going to let you practice within the constraints of their business. And then
Branch
12 to
out.
16 months later, you got your own thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think it starts like, for me it started like, I started getting bored with the same kind of copy over and over again, and I needed a change, so I had to quit. So what was your turning point? When did you quit your job and started branching out?
Um, I, for me, so I will teach you to be rich was my first copy gig. I went from just a few $1,000s a month retainer to uh, like a mid 5-figure salary job there. Did that for about 12 more months, past 3 months that I did it. Got into a senior position at Dr. Axe where I was making pretty good money. And then I started taking on a couple of side projects. And I had 2 or 3 months in a row where I was like, wow, these people on the side are paying me more than that they will on my full-time job.
So true.
And I was like, it kind of seems stupid to be doing this every day because I'm spending 8 to 10 hours a day over here at this and 1 hour a day on this other thing that's actually making me more than my job. And I was like, I'm going to quit. Yeah. And so that was like the turning point for me is like, and, and I actually had that debate in my head a couple months sooner, even before I got to the point where my freelance projects were actually doing more than my full-time work. I had the thought where it's like, do I want to do this without a level of security? And like, I think part of it is like the money. You want to be managing that and thinking about that because it's going to be important. Because I always say, if you're going to make a big decision, you want to lower your stress, you want to be well fed, and you want to be well rested because all these things can cause an insane amount of erratic decision making. And so like if you're thinking like, I don't know how I'm going to make rent next month, and you're constantly stressed about getting new clients and like all this stuff is like in flux for you, you are not ready. You need to
Yeah,
take another month. You need to like you need to be calm because
yeah,
the feeling you want when you go into your starting your actual business is like, it should be like, this is fun. This is going
yeah,
to be so much fun. And you don't want it to be stress. But I do think there's a point where you have to burn the boats too, because I think the best decisions are when you have no way of coming back. And for me, like I had that thought kind of percolating in my head for a couple months where I was like, man, it would be really nice to actually quit and just have my own thing, work my own hours, do work on my own schedule. And then I went to the Tony Robbins event and did some deep work on myself. And I was like, there's a couple more things that I would like to do. I'd like to coach other copywriters for a minute. So like I actually ended up having a person on my team who started to do stuff. And I'm like, I want to, do one last hurrah. I want to launch like a 8-figure funnel on my own. And I want to do it at this company. And so just set a little list of goals and I'm like, achieve these things and then you're ready to go.
mm, right. That's awesome. Like, I think for me, when I was about to quit my job, like when I was thinking about it, I made sure I made enough. I filled my bank balance to an extent that, like, let's say uh this one job that was paying me, like, say a couple, like, $5,000 a month. I made sure that I had at least $60,000 in my bank account, so that when I quit my job, I have 1 year of runway. I will not go hungry for 1 year. That kind of helped me quit my first job.
More freelancers would benefit by that mentality than some of the other mentalities that kind of get pushed out there because there is going to be ups and downs in your business. And even when I quit, because when I was kind of transitioning out of full-time work, the first client that I got actually paid most of the money that I would make was actually performance based. So it was like a bonus work.
Oh, I love
And I
that kind of
remember
work.
I love it too, because there's a lot of upside. But there's also that moment where you're like, oh, there's uncertainty. Like and you have to figure out this stuff for yourself. So like I recommend people always get really familiar with what the human needs are and like which one do you kind of skew the most to? Do you need certainty? Do you need variety? Do you need, this sense of that you're working on things that are bigger than you? These things are all very important to know what motivates you and certainty is very high on the spectrum for me. So there was, I had written all the copy for this project and I turned it in and it went through legal, and the legal team didn't like it. And they were like, oh my gosh, we're going to rewrite the hook. We rewrite the hook. And it's like a month delay at this point. We have to go, we have to reshoot, rebook everything to redo the shoot. Another month goes by. Now we have to rework it all again because all of our numbers in the financial, because it was a financial promo. So all of our numbers were wrong. So now we've got to go in and do it again.
Oh, wow.
Update everything. So all the hooks are wrong. All the testimonials are wrong. And so at this point, we're like 3 or 4 months in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't made any money with my primary client in 4 months. And I just quit my job. Am I a literal idiot? And then the promo goes live, and like, the royalties piles up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never seen this amount of money going in my bank account at one time. But there's those moments where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if this is going to work out at all.
Okay. I think that stress, like, it depends on how much risk averse or risk pro you are in taking the clients, I guess. Because I personally love incentive based works, but then again, like, I had this filter, like, I only work with people whom I like. Like, I know for a fact that I can give them results. Like, I'm not sure. I'll never work with a financial institution because I don't understand their stuff. So I think that kind of helped me a lot. Awesome.
It's my favorite kind of copy to write in some cases, because I nerded out over finance in school, but yeah, I've kind of gotten away from this stuff and more on the health and supplement stuff these days. But
yes, awesome talk. Thank you very much, Robert. Like, we have been talking for an hour, and this has been one of the best talks that I have on my channel because I love talking about copies. Like, I've studied, like, one of my best favorite books is this Robert Collier's Letter Books. I literally nerded out on this book, like, read it 3-4 times, and since that day I have been like, let's talk to more copywriters, more and more and more. And
more copywriters named Robert.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, cool, man. I had a blast, and I can't believe it's been an hour, but yeah, you're an awesome host, and I hope everyone got some good takeaways from this. It's been fun.
Yes. Thank you very much, Robert.